My name is Galen Paulson. I am a management faculty member and the Associate Dean for Executive Education. We are thrilled to have you here. I'd like to welcome you to the 2009 Executive Education Open House and welcome you to the AT&T Executive Education and Conference Center. Coming back to campus is always a wonderful thing. One of the things I talk about with folks when they come here is that on campus we have what we call the luxury of opportunity. That if you look at people who engage in critical thinking and in creative kind of thinking, one of the things that happens is that you need to have that luxury of opportunity to engage in some thought and to step back and to say, where are we? What's happening? Where are we trying to go? And a campus environment really kind of affords us that opportunity. And it really speaks to the goal of executive education, that this is about an opportunity for you to exchange ideas, to think about where you're going, to try and be strategic, and hopefully then to go back and apply the ideas that you've heard and to impact your organizations. And so to those ends, what we're looking at today are a couple of the mechanisms by which we do that in exec ed. One of the things that we do is to give people experiences and to give them opportunities to try new things. Another interesting thing that happens though in executive education is that you get a chance to interact with colleagues and with people from world-class organizations, to interact with people who are world-class in their industry. And so to that end, we have an industry panel this afternoon that I think that you'll find enjoyable around growth. We also afford you the opportunity to interact with faculty, and faculty of a world-class nature here at the University of Texas. And we will have an opportunity for that in our 5:30 faculty panel. So we kind of have an interesting mix of things happening today. Our agenda this afternoon from 3:30 until around 4:45, we will have the panel in here with industry experts. We will then break and we will go downstairs to the courtyard where we'll have a little reception or networking, as I guess we say in the business world. And then at 5:30, we will have the faculty panel, which we will host downstairs in the auditorium. The turnout for today is actually much larger than we anticipated, so we've had to expand our room, and so we're thrilled with that today. The format we'll hear in just a little bit is going to be interactive in nature, and so there's an opportunity for you to engage in some Q&A as we go through both of the panels this afternoon. For those of you who are Gen Yers and are Twitter addicts, there is on your welcome page a hashtag. Yeah, you may know better than me. And the hashtag is listed here. If you really look into Twitter, that's your opportunity to kind of carry on a background conversation about some of the things that you're hearing this afternoon. And so that's available to us as well. At this stage, let me introduce our moderator for the industry panel this afternoon. Professor Jim Fredriksen is the Tom E. Nelson Jr. Regents Professor of Business at the McCombs School of Business. His real interest is around strategy, and so if you look at his bio internally there in the folder, you'll see that he does research and teaches around strategic decision making, organizational structure, executive compensation, and on leadership. He co-authored an article called "Are You Sure You Have a Strategy?" that appeared in the Academy of Management Executive and received that journal's Best Paper Award in 2001. I'll turn the floor over to Jim.
Again, I want to echo Galen's welcome to you. It's great to have such a great big crowd here. And for those of you who haven't visited the campus recently, welcome back. For those of you who haven't visited the AT&T Center at all, enjoy it while you're here. Hopefully you'll have an opportunity to attend some kind of function here, maybe with your own company and some colleagues. It's a great facility, and we'd like you all to take advantage of the opportunity to use it. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a panel, as you know, of executives who are going to give their thoughts about their companies and their companies' efforts and attempts to grow and their strategy for growth in these very difficult times. And so what we want to do is to find out what they're doing. We've got a variety of industries, and we'll get a variety of perspectives that will reflect the unique features of these three companies and their respective industries. We're going to, the format I'd like to use is we'll have each speaker give 10, 15 minutes of comments. There will be some questions that I'm going to initiate. Then we can have some questions from the audience that are specific to that company and to that presenter and regarding their particular circumstance. And then we'll move on to the next presenter. Similar format. I'll have some questions. You'll have some questions. We'll move on to the next one. And then we'd like to use probably the last half hour to address or to receive your questions to any member of the panel. When you raise questions in either the first or the second instance, we have people with microphones in the audience. I'll kind of point somebody out, and they'll bring you the microphone. And if you're directing in the second half, directing the question to one or the other of the panelists, please identify the person that you want to receive your question first. We're going to start today with comments and an overview from John Hanks, who's a vice president with Austin's own National Instruments. Again, he's going to tell you what they've been doing, what they plan to do, and what's critical for the success of their company in an environment like the one we're facing now. Then we'll move to Tiffany Dávila-Dunne, who is an executive vice president of BBVA Compass. You're aware of them maybe in recent months, particularly as they've made their acquisition of Guarantee. And before that, Compass Bank, growing tremendously in the U.S. and the South, in the South U.S. In general, although they are first and foremost a Spanish bank. And then we'll wrap up with comments from John Berra, who's the chairman of Emerson Process Management. Emerson's a very unique company. We were talking before we came up here. I think few of us would know that he runs a company that is the largest part of a $25 billion company and has their headquarters here, and few of us are aware of that. 27,000 employees, 1,000 of them here, but for a number of reasons has a pretty low profile locally. We'd like all of you to learn a bit more about that company, what they're doing, and try to draw some lessons for your own firm and what it might do in these difficult times. So with that as an introduction, I'd like to start with John Hanks, and please join me in welcoming.
See, thank you, Jim and Chantel and Galen. It's really nice to speak today. And as a quick introduction, let's see, I'm John Hanks. I graduated from Texas A&M and the University of Texas, so I'm okay. It's all right. National Instruments is really an offshoot of the University of Texas Applied Research Lab in 1976. And many of you may know of our success here in town, but everybody loves to see those up and to the right curves there, right? Those are great curves. I think what's interesting about National Instruments is how we're really different in a lot of different ways. There's a few things that this curve shows. You've got about a decade there where you saw very flat to nothing, right? And the 90s were VC dollars, and a lot of those things float around. National Instruments probably wouldn't have been funded in that time frame, with a patience and also a look for a very long-term view on things. In fact, it seems when you tell most people this, that we have a 100-year plan, it seems kind of silly, but we've been talking about a 100-year plan for 15 years. It took us 15 years to figure out that we needed a 100-year plan, and then we put a 100-year plan together. So that's interesting. Also, I would say that there hasn't been too many business plans written in the last, except for the last 10 years. Before that, it was create a product, get it in front of some customers, iterate, learn what you should do to make the product better, and go forward. There's some other things with this curve that may not be as apparent, but you could probably assume so, and I'll say that it's probably a case, is that with the growth curve like that, 32 years of double-digit growth, all of them profitable. We had a couple of years there, 2002, where we had a decline in sales. It's 1 year. There's hubris. I would say that that's something that we've had to learn in this time frame, is that the models have changed. And when you are this successful, then often and the model changes, you have to rethink where you're at. So I would say that we're a lot more humble this year after the 2009, start of 2009, because we're at a 20% decline this year, which I didn't show on the graph. Right? So that hubris is something that set in to kind of reestablish what we're doing. And often what I say is that what we've started to do is the relativity score. How are we doing relative to everybody else, right? And that's an easy thing to do, but even in this time frame, there's a story about the three pigs. You've got houses built out of straw and sticks. They've been blown down. National Instruments had a brick house, but yet it's kind of leaned a little bit this last year with the strong winds. I feel very comfortable about the future, and that it's a really great place to be, and a little bit about the way we go about business. A lot of engineers, it's a technical meritocracy, and engineers are king at National Instruments, and if you create something that's useful and you can get it in front of customers and get feedback, that's what we try to do. However, we do spend 35% of revenue on sales and marketing to tell people about what we've done. And those two forces work together to make it successful. And I get a lot of engineering professors that come to me and say, hey, well, you can make it for 80 and sell it for 100, and then I have to go through the story about, okay, I'm going to spend 2 to 3 times what it costs to make to tell people about it. We are intensely focused on the future. I think we spend a lot of time thinking about 5 to 10 years down the line because we're betting on technologies. Really, our strategy is to bet on disruptive technologies and invest now, and in 5 to 10 years, they will come to fruition. The amount of cash that we've had financially on the side with no debt, we were chastised by the street for not using that money in other ways, and it's actually turned out to be a great thing that we had the cash in this time frame. So we're very diverse. We have $4,000 as an average order for National Instruments, which is amazing when you're approaching a billion-dollar company. Okay, and 30,000 customers, very diverse. What we do is step back and say, how have we managed this in this time frame? We have this, really it's universally used within all of our branches across the world, and it's the idea that there's these different stakeholders within the company, and we've asked each of the stakeholders to make a commitment. Employees have made a commitment. We do have variable compensation. A lot of the company is on variable compensation, anywhere from 10 to 40%. So the fact that our revenues are down, that's been easy for us to not really slash salaries and do those kind of things, but yet we've had a 5% decline in salaries. Okay? Officers have taken more than that. Regular employees have taken 5%. But what's offset that is experience from 2001 where we upped our variable compensation from 10 to a higher percentage to that. So that was a key thing. We've asked our suppliers to give us really good discounts. Right? Have them make a commitment. Yet we've partnered with them for years. Bring them in, we tell them the strategy, and we ask them to tell us their strategy. And this is a part of the advice that I would give is to predict the future by knowing the future. And we use our suppliers actually to tell us the technology roadmaps that will allow us to invest. Intel, Analog Devices, Texas Instruments, on down the line. But yet, in the same time, we turn around and say, you need to help us and deliver discounts this year. On the other hand, we've asked our customers not to take discounts. Right? So that's a commitment that we've asked them to take, and that this delta between what you can get your suppliers to take a discount and what you can ask your customers not to take a discount shows the value that you're offering to your company. So. And then finally, shareholders, as you know, in the stocks taking a hit, dividends, all those things are impacted. So this triangle has really kind of driven a lot of our decision making as a company. What we do, the products that we make, is pretty simple. We're a platform company. We make equipment for scientists and engineers so that they can make measurements, scientific measurements, or they can build test systems. So your iPhone, your BlackBerry, all those devices, every component in an automobile is tested. So if manufacturing is coming down, test equipment goes down. That's one division. Division that I head is called the Industrial Embedded, and our products are used to make medical devices, make new renewable energy devices used in windmills for controllers and those kind of things. So those are the two groups within the company. So the key thing there from a strategy perception or perspective is that we have this platform company where we have a software and all the pieces have to add value together. So we don't have different divisions. Everything kind of comes up through one software approach. And it's a modular approach where in the past you'd have to buy an instrument. Now you can build your own. And it's been a very successful strategy. A few customer examples. This is Jeff Stevens. He's a serial inventor. He built a new medical device that got FDA approval, was funded by VCs, and he's on to his third one now where he's creating different medical devices, and he uses our products to prototype and then to deploy this solution into the marketplace. So if it involves measurements and control, and it's called a cryoablation system, where it treats tumors by ablating them with very low temperature, by freezing them. You can see the prototype system there. It's in the lab. They test it, and then they get it out into the market. Our value proposition to them is that you could use the National Instruments tools to be able to create that prototype, then go out and test and test for economic value with customers, and then you can use the same tools in the final deployed product. The alternative approach is to design at a very low-level component level. It takes much more time to develop the solution, and if you want to change it, it's less flexible. So time to market and flexibility is really the value proposition for these new types of devices. There's a lot of social relevance that's going on, especially in this time frame. This is Dave Brandt, and by the way, he looks really good in a suit. He's a Nucor process engineer. He invented an approach that uses electric arc technology to take recycled steel and make rebar, is what Nucor does. And they're one of the leaders in the steel industry because they have very efficient processes. If you've read Innovator's Dilemma by Clayton Christensen, they use Nucor as a case study. National Instruments, with Dave Brandt, he invented a new process to increase the efficiencies, use less energy by weighing materials and monitoring the process. He's become a hero within Nucor. And what they do is now turn around and market. It's not kind of odd to see a steel company positioning themselves as green, but through some of these new processes, they're saving up to 70%. They're being 70% more efficient. So this is kind of the social relevance that we see that our customers taking these measurement tools and be able to do that. What we've done in this time frame is to invest for the future. So we have what we call a green engineering grant and a medical device grant, and these are two significant areas where we see a lot of growth in this time frame with new devices. And you can come to National Instruments with a 1 or 2 page plan or a prototype of your solution, and we will grant you software and hardware so that you can take it to the next phase. And we've been very successful. We've actually made about 40 medical device grants in this last year, and we just started the Green Engineering Grant Program, and we've done a couple of those. So that's one that's coming on really quickly. As far as our strategy goes, Chris Anderson wrote a book called The Long Tail, and I thought it was a good description of what National Instruments done. A lot of players in this space try to focus on the high volume sales. National Instruments has built a deep moat, a competitive position in serving all of the customers in the light blue, the lower volume solutions that in some ways are very unattractive customers. Now, I would never say that in front of a customer that they were unattractive, but yet they're unattractive to the players that are going for the high volume sales. So we've built a platform that a customer can build an application in fairly low volume and deploy it and be successful with it. And what happens over time is we start creeping up the curve and we get into higher volume solutions. Our number one volume solution is actually a toy by Lego, sold in the millions. Very nervous on Christmas Day when they're open that they're using National Instruments software to program a robot. And it's also a strategic gifting plan in that we're teaching kids that are 10 and above how to program. So we have an interest in creating more scientists and engineers and kind of secretly convincing them that software programming is fun by using the Lego Mindstorms. Lego is, I think it's the top 6, it's the number 6 well-known brand in the world. Not a bad place to be as well. Okay. So my quick tips for succeeding in this kind of uncertain times is, number 1, predict the future. And the way National Instruments does this by knowing the future is that we ask our suppliers to be partners. Intel, come in and tell us your 3-year plan. What's your long-term vision for what's going to happen with hardware and software? We are the number one of the top customers for analog devices, which is analog component supplier. They have a very close relationship. Also, they use our gear to test their devices. So we have a very close relationship with the semiconductor and software vendors to tell us the future. And this asymmetric information allows us to have very good long-term planning. We're promoting prototyping. Prototyping is real important right now for many industries: medical devices, robotics, autonomous vehicles, clean tech. National Instruments gear is used to prototype all those solutions before they go into mass quantity. The other thing is the people side of this business is that there's a lot of great talent that's out there today that we're recruiting and have left their companies or they've had challenges. So we're very aggressively looking for talent in specific areas. If I have an RF engineer in here, I'd like to talk to you afterwards. Okay. And then we have many strategic gifting programs. We are very involved in the STEM programs and a program called FIRST for inspiration, recognition of science and technology. It's like a sports competition, but it's for students in high school that are building competitive robots. And this last year, 35,000 students participated in this and had mentors that were engineers from NASA, large companies, to mentor these teams. That strategic gifting program is really paying off to inspire kids to get involved in technology. So that's one, and we have many of those strategic gifting programs. In this time frame, too, I've noticed that it's much easier to approach a competitor that in past times when you had hubris and you were growing 20 or 30%, you say, we can take them on. I think at this time, both competitors are looking at each other and say, what can we do together to grow the market together? So I often have interesting meetings and conversations now with my competition to figure out how we can work together, which I couldn't have seen happening 5 to 10 years ago. And then finally, there's this interesting trend that's going on with Twitter and Facebook and social media, is that the introvert engineers are starting to be extrovert engineers, but online. We have more than one engineer that doesn't work for National Instruments that has contributed 10,000 pieces of content to our online community. And this is intellectual property, an answer to a question, or software code. Think about that if it took 10 minutes for 10,000 pieces. We have multiple people who have done that. So this social media and this ability to collaborate is that we're enabling that through our marketing and sales. And then finally, when I talk to engineers and scientists, I don't know if I have a lot of engineers and scientists in here today, but what I try to bring to light is, I think engineers and scientists often think of intellectual property, capital, around 4 types of capital. One is intellectual property, another is financial capital, and they really understand lab equipment, real capital expenditure. But the last one that I encourage them to be aware of is social capital. And let's face it, us engineers are not always the best at social events. And really say to reach out and find out who is Ryan. This is an organizational chart. Ryan is he's the person, it seems like he's the go-to person in the organization. He's connected with everybody. So the question is, are you Ryan? And if you're not Ryan, do you know Ryan? And you should be connected with him. So I would ask you today, go get connected with Ryan. If it's an engineer or scientist and you're a business person and you have marketing and sales, finance background, and you want to, there's so many engineers out there that have a good idea that's in their study or in their garage. and you could help them bring it out of there. So, so the scope of your success may depend on the scope of your network, and I think that applies in this time frame also. It's a great time for you to socially to expand your network. And so a few points here is I'm making my list, and go find 5 people that could help you with your solution, and then go ahead and schedule those meetings. If you're in this room, you probably are aware of that. But you may not be aware that there's a scientist and engineer that you can connect with that can add new value. Okay, thank you.
Great. Couple quick questions, John. You talk about the 100-year perspective, or thinking for 100 years. Most firms struggle with getting beyond the next quarter. Where does, and I recognize that may not be as literal as it sounded, it seems like National Instruments, at least in the executive suite, has a pretty long-term perspective. Mm-hmm. Where does it come from? Why? Why have you been able to maintain this as opposed to get jerked around by market responses?
Yeah, we still have a founder that started the company from the garage. I think he took on $15,000 worth of investment, and it's his vocation, right? I mean, it's to come to work, and often he's at your desk at 7:30 in the morning thinking about 5 to 10 years from now. So I think it starts from the top with somebody who's visionary and sees the importance in planning for that 10-year life, that 10-year span. Now, 100 years, okay, what goes into 100-year planning? I think it's culture, right? How do you build a culture for the company that will transition beyond just a few people? And I think that's been real important. And specifically, we have specific training, leadership training classes that we've implemented. We had a board of director that came over from Motorola Freescale, and we implemented about 10 years ago a leadership training to kind of teach and make sure that everybody was aligned on the cultural values and those kind of things. That's been real critical for that long-term planning.
A question related just to a unique feature of your strategy, and that's making a living off of low-volume customers. What are some of the unique issues? I mean, for a company your size, you probably have a much longer customer list than most companies would strive to. What are some of the unique issues?
Yeah, the infrastructure to pull that off from the sales and marketing side. I mean, we have about, I think the number is up to 2 million unique visitors a month to our website. Okay, well, we support all pricing models for every country, so you can dial in whatever price that you want online for more than 10,000 pieces of scientific and instrumentation. To be able to handle that manufacturing, to be able to inventory, to be able to take the orders, it's just an incredible deep moat that's hard to penetrate if you're a competitor. So I would say those elements, and then the pace at which we release new products. We're still on a pace of a product a day, a new product a day in that range.
Okay.
So
you also mentioned when you had the graphic up of those 4 components of that triangle, the tight relationships with suppliers and kind of partnering with suppliers, and you used Intel as an example. And as a dominant player in their business, a lot of folks would tread lightly with Intel because of their power and their influence and how they're going to exert it over you as a customer. How do you manage that relationship so that because of their scale, they don't dominate you when it comes to pricing and so on?
With specific examples, there's a new chipset based on multi-core technology called the Larrabee. And they're looking for use cases and early adopters to be able to show the benefits of the Larrabee multi-core, parallel processing. So we provide that early adopter. We adopt it, we start using it, testing it, and provide feedback on their products. So they value us from a strategic perspective, even though we may not be one of the highest volume customers in the world, but from a strategic perspective, we find that area where we can provide strategic value.
Okay, great. Do we have a couple questions from the audience specifically for John? You got one right over here.
John, you mentioned
Can you hear him?
Yes.
Can you folks?
The grant program, the medical device and green engineering grant program, it's real simple. There's a website, you can go to it. It outlines, here's what you could do. You provide a one-page overview of what your system that you're building, what the National Instruments hardware and software you're using. What we do is we have more than 500 field engineers, and you have to provide the contact that you've talked to and that you've basically demonstrated your idea to that person. And then what we'll do is we'll grant you up to $25,000 of software. And the only stipulation is you buy one thing from us. You could buy an accessory for a few $100s. And so it's basically a $25,000 grant to do that. Not everybody receives the grant. You know, we will tell you why. We think it's either a good idea or a bad idea. And so there's kind of a filtering process that we go through. But I think we're approaching, for the medical side, it's more than, the last number I saw was about 30, 35 systems that we've done.
Question over here. Anybody for John? We got one over there. You got a mic. She's giving you a mic right there.
I have a question regarding the first program you mentioned.
Sure.
Building competitive robots, and what other partnerships do you have with schools? I think you referred to it as a gifting program.
Well, it's from the highest level. I've called it a strategic gifting program. We're gifting to programs that are interested in moving science and engineering forward and working with kids to do that. So the Lego program, where it's Lego Mindstorm's robot, it's a toy. We've licensed our software to them. LabVIEW you buy as a professional system for several $1,000s, but if you get it with the toy, you can get the toy and the software and learn how to use it for a couple of $100s. So the other one that's real key to us is the STEM program, and science, technology, engineering, and math educational programs, and we're very supportive of that all over the U.S. Okay.
Great. What I'd like to do is to move on to Tiffany, and then we'll try to come back for some general questions and include John in those as well. So thank you very much.
Is it on?
Yeah.
Good. I wanted to give a little background before I get started, because I think my role in BBVA Compass is a little different than my esteemed presenters. I head up the communications and corporate responsibility and reputation area for our bank. And so basically what I like to think I do is I tell the story of the organization. We also house, and this is done across the BBVA group, houses corporate responsibility and reputation, so I also protect the story. So I work very closely with the lines of business, really looking at what is our story and how can we tell our story. And we have a very positive story, both here in the US and worldwide. But also having corporate responsibility and reputation, I'm also always looking at what's going on in the organization and the risk piece related to that, related to our reputation. Critically important as you look at why we're growing. I often hear a lot of times when I'm on an airplane or when you're with somebody and they say, what do you do? And I tell them, well, I head up the communications group, both media relations, crisis management for a financial institution. They say, oh, poor you. It must be a difficult job. It has been a challenging job in the last year. I mean, there's been a lot of bank bashing. But we have a different story to tell, and it's critically important. People always, and I always say, you know, I'm lucky to have the job I have and work for the bank I have. But our bank is not doing well, and as we talk about growth and we talk about why our bank is growing, it's not by luck. And a lot of people think that, you know, why are you doing so well right now? Why, compared to your peers, are you doing better than others? And a lot of people just want to say, well, you're a little luckier than others. You're a little bit more diversified. But as I go through the slides, I really want to get to the last 3 slides, because you always have to do your corporate spiel here and kind of give you a little background, because I want you guys to walk away knowing who BBVA Compass is. But I really want to walk is that as I was preparing this presentation and you know, got the request from Jim, is to really reflect, and I tell the story of the organization all the time, but reflect, why are we growing? Why are we doing better? And to reflect so that I could share on some key pieces about us as an organization and what we do differently that I think is positioning us better than other financial institutions. And a lot of that has to do with culture. And I'm going to talk a little bit about that today. So what I have here is basically I'm going to go over very quickly, and I'm going to go through these slides. But I really want to get at the third section is about what makes us different, and to talk a little bit about the decisions we're making internally and the things that are driving those decisions that make us different. So if I look here, the BBVA Group, we're part of the BBVA Group. And for those of you who were watching the Guarantee piece, because Guarantee does have a presence here in Austin, the biggest piece that was out in the media, and we were working the media, trying to build those relationships weeks in advance, the biggest piece that came out was subsidiary of a foreign institution buys a failed US bank. It was the biggest piece in the media. We are a member of the BBVA Group based in Spain. Very, very proud of that fact. We're a US bank, Alabama chartered, our US business unit, but we are a member of a BBVA Group, a highly recognized group, a group doing extraordinarily well, and it's based on the culture and the things that we've been doing for years, doing the right things in the good times, so that when times get bad, and it has been a very hard year, very, very hard year for business activity, but we're going to talk about some of those foundational pieces that have enabled us to grow and to be strong in these times. So if you look, starting from BBVA, a lot of people look at the acronym, Banco Bilbao Vizcaya, merged with Argentaria in Spain, two large, strong banks in Spain, merged, and we say is a 150-year history, the bringing together of 150 banks over our entire history of our group. I'll tell you a little bit more about where we have a presence. You can see here from the map here, we have a presence across the globe, a very good concentration in South America. And you'll see here we have 5 lines of business: Asia, Spain and Portugal, South America, the US, and wholesale banking and asset management. But we work very closely together, and as we talk about the things that make us different, one of the areas that falls under my team is culture. And I know that John mentioned culture. We have an intensive culture program in our group, and I don't think it's a brainwashing program. It's a program very focused on behaviors and making the right decisions across the bank. And we're going to talk about that. That is the same program across every single business unit, translated into many different languages, but it's the same program, and it's about good banking practices. It's about having a relationship with your customers for the long term, not selling them a product that doesn't make sense for them, for the long term. So if you look here, there's some additional numbers. Of course, you can see 48 million customers and all of those pieces, and I know this presentation is going to be provided to you. But a little bit too, I know here in the US, people in other parts of the world, and going back to, for those of you in Mexico, we are BBVA Bancomer, the largest bank in Mexico. Top 1 to 2 banks in many countries across South America, including Argentina, Venezuela, Chile, and lots of fun countries that are great to visit in South America. But if you look here, I think, here in the US we can sometimes be US-centric, but I think this is a good slide to show you a couple of things. It shows you, related to net income, how we fare to some of the peers around the world. And of course, I know for the US, most interesting is JP Morgan. So this gives you a little picture, a little snapshot of our group. And I always like to talk about financials, and coming from a communication background, financials for me are proof points. But the story behind it is what I want to share with you today about why we have these financials and why we have the ability to grow. And you can see here too, I also included cost-to-income ratio. BBVA is very focused on efficiency. Very focused on efficiency, and that's part of our culture, is to constantly be looking at making prudent decisions. And to where's the value creation of every single project we approach? Where's the value creation? And of course, to return on equity, clearly a great indicator of a strong company. If you look at BBVA Compass here, many of you here in Texas may know some of the banks that we acquired and kind of our strategy for growth. I've been with the BBVA Group since they entered here in the US. And you can look here, our first acquisition was Laredo National Bank. And then you can see Texas State Bank, which was based out of McAllen. State National Bank, both Fort Worth and Lubbock, very strong presence. And then Compass Bank. And our most recent acquisition, of course, was Guarantee, which I know there's a lot of press both here in Austin, and across the world and nationally on our acquisition of Guarantee Bank. But this gives you a little picture of the growth opportunity. And I'm going to talk a little bit more, but looking at this too, and we did have a presence in the US, and you can see some of the pieces. We had our New York office. We also have BBVA Puerto Rico, which I support too, is our general market bank in Puerto Rico. But you can see a little bit about the growth. But it's not just growth through acquisition too. There's a strategy to get enough. In banking, you need enough critical mass then to grow too, as you have that critical mass. So there's a piece here. And this, again, is just numbers and proof points to the story. But this will give you a little bit of numbers related to our presence with the Guarantee acquisition. I'm going through these quickly. If you look here in Texas, too, and across this slide on the U.S. gives you a little bit that we are now ranked 4th in Texas. We were 4th in Texas, actually, before the Guarantee, but it closed the gap with the big boys, as we like to call them, and I'll show them on our next slide. If you look here, you can kind of see where we're at now currently with Guarantee here in Texas. Again, closing the gap, as I like to call it, with the big boys, with the Bank of America, JP Morgan, and Wells Fargo. Again, giving you a picture of us as an organization. Again, the numbers that represent who we are. But I want to get to what makes us different and to talk about why we're growing and why we have the ability to acquire a bank when a lot of banks are struggling on a day-to-day basis not to be seized by the FDIC. So this is a little bit about why we're different. Going back to culture and who we are as an organization, we talk a lot about, and as part of my job, I focus both on internal communications and really communicating the strategy of the organization to the entire employee base. But we have a vision at BBVA, and this is kind of our mantra, and we say it a lot, but it's not just saying it, it's embedding it in our practices and every business decision. We talk about we work for a better future for people, okay? So everything we do as an organization needs to focus on making decisions that enable this vision, enable us to realize this vision. And we talk about the foundation of 3 pillars, people, and that includes, you know, our customers, of course. Customer is king. But of course, that includes the communities in which we operate, and of course, our employees, and of course, our shareholders, and trying to be efficient and thinking about the money they've invested in us and respecting that investment they've done in our company and being very efficient and prudent. Okay, we also have principles here. As I said, across the entire organization, the nearly 110,000 employees, we have 7 principles. But again, I came from a different background, and Jim and Galen and Chantal know a little bit about my background. I came from a consulting background. I came from Hewitt Associates. I worked with them with lots and lots of companies looking at organizational change, culture, talent management, and all different pieces. So it was an interesting piece because I worked with lots of different organizations, and I don't think there's one perfect corporate culture, okay? But I think what's important about your corporate culture is that from the top down, you know, everybody understands that it has to drive business decisions, and that your corporate culture and the pieces that you've deemed important to you have to drive business decisions. So we look at some of the issues that other banks have gotten into. I think they kind of strayed because they didn't have some guiding light saying, you know, in the short term this makes sense, but in the long term, does this make sense? So we're going to talk about, there's 7 principles, very, very straightforward, and I'll talk about a few of those, but, you know, putting the customer at the center of our business, innovation is the engine of progress, different ones, but we really work with our employees to understand behaviors related to that. And then, of course, innovation. We'll talk a lot about innovation. We were having a discussion earlier. At BBVA, we look at innovation differently, and I was talking with Jim that actually I sit in the chairman's office. We divide chairman from CEO office, and the chairman's office is very unique in BBVA, and this is the model across the entire globe. The chairman is really the visionary of the organization. The CEO drives the lines of business and the daily business and really being focused on the numbers, but they separate out. Okay? The CEO does report to the chairman, communications, corporate responsibility, we sit in the chairman's office. So I'm separate. So sometimes I have to go to the lines of business, or I have to go to HR, and I have to have sometimes difficult discussions if I think, you know, there's a reputational risk here, okay? Audit, compliance, and all of this also sit over in the chairman's office. And that's a big piece of our business model. Innovation, as I was getting to in Jim, innovation also sits in the chairman's office outside the IT and operations. And innovation's looking at every way that we can think differently, okay? That we can approach things differently that will make us a better company, okay? But there's something foundational to who we are in our corporate culture, that you're always trying to evolve, you're always trying to change, but foundationally, these principles have to drive who we are as an organization. Okay, this is a slide too, and goes back to our principles. The principle that is kind of our mantra at the BBVA Group is the customer at the center of our business. And you'll see here that I think people, when they think of the customer at the center of their business, good customer service. When I joined the BBVA Group, it was really interesting because everything they do is to put the customer, even from reward programs, recognition programs, compensation programs, is how does this drive placing the customer, breaking down silos. The banks that we acquired in the US were very siloed. Retail banking didn't speak to corporate and commercial banking. Corporate and commercial banking didn't speak to wealth management or asset management. And so it was restructuring the organization. And we are still in the process of doing that. But everything related to HR, to the organizational structure of the organization, how risk interacts with the lines of business, is all about how can we interface better with our customer. And that's IT and ops and all of those pieces. I just wanted to put some last reflections up to round out the slide. I know you guys were trying to go through quickly today, but I just started reflecting, you know, if we are a financial institution growing, what makes us different? And so these were kind of my reflections. You know, customer-centric. That's embedding that drive to serve the customer in everything we do. Everything, the way we structure ourselves, the way, you know, from cross-sell to promote cross-selling, communications too, trying to get at all our different stakeholders too as well, but principle-based and talent-driven. A big drive to develop talent within the group, I think, has enabled us to grow in challenging times, having good people on board, okay? A business culture where short-term goals, you know, are important. You know, I think we all have to understand short-term goals, but they never take over the long-term vision of the company. And that goes back to that piece. I always like to tell the story of our chairman, Jose Maria Garcia Mayer, who I've had the privilege of working with several years. He always talks about when he came here to the US, the subprime piece. They told him he was really, really gonna lose a credible opportunity here in the US. And they started to show him all the pieces, and he says, I'm a banker, 30-year banker, and I don't understand all of these pieces. How can I provide this to customers if, as a banker and with the financial knowledge I have, I don't understand what you're telling me, okay? So that's a critical piece to who we are as an organization. We use the term global. And for any of you that work in an international group, I can tell you there's challenges. I've had the opportunity, I worked in Mexico with DuPont for many, many years, and it wasn't a global organization. We had it was Mexico DuPont. Some pieces were global, but some pieces were not. BBVA is very global, and we call that is global and local, okay? So there is a clear piece about there's certain things that we do not compromise on across the global group. And that's that principles, ethics, our business model, our corporate governance model. There's no compromise on that piece. But you know what? Business is different here in the US than it is in Mexico. It's different in Mexico than it is in Venezuela. So there's local adaptations. But at the core, there's some pieces that you're not willing to compromise on. And that's what we call global. And I think it's a big driver for the success that BBVA has had around the world. An organizational structure. Very interesting how BBVA organizes itself, that encourages, but also requires collaboration. When I first joined the group, I was on, I've never seen so many committees I was invited to. Lots of committee-driven, but it's critically important. But it's the way we organize ourselves with both dotted and reporting lines, as well as direct reporting lines, that makes collaboration a requirement. And as we talk about, the BBVA business model is very much, we want the customer to see one organization. Where the traditional model here in the US, and Wells Fargo, for you guys, does have a model similar to this related to breaking down the silos between different banking lines of business. But most US banks have been very siloed. So is a critical piece to organizing. If you want to break down silos and you want people to interact, you have to structure yourself and you have to reward collaboration. So that's a key piece of who we are. And a talent model focused internally, okay? We do recruit, we love to get great, bright people on board, but I think as an organization, and give you a little background, Jose Maria Garcia Mayer, who's our chairman, has been with the bank 30-some years. Our CEO has been with the bank over 20. Both of them are career BBVAers. When I first came into the BBVA group, it's incredibly, because I came from the US talent market, it's incredible how many people are long-timers in the group. Now we recruit, we love to bring great talent in, but as an organization, there's always looking first to growing the talent within, okay? And I want to talk about, too, the last piece is a talent model focused internally and not restricted to traditional paths. This is one of the most interesting pieces about BBVA here in the US, is they were a little taken back by the professional silos. People swap roles, they move into new roles, and currently our director of HR was brought from commercial bank. He was a 25-year commercial banker, great people, skills, and they just felt like he had the right skills to lead this department. Interesting, in BBVA, people with the right skills, they try to get them into different areas. They believe that that's part of innovation too, is bringing somebody with a different mindset, bringing a traditional banker, a commercial banker perhaps into retail to look at things differently, bringing somebody from the wealth management area into corporate banking. And that's done across the BBVA group. I just put up some things about, too, about us as a company and growing, and some pieces that I think are very positive messages. Again, I wanted to just thank Jim and Chantal and Galen for inviting me here today. And I guess we'll open it up to questions if you'd like.
Great, thank you. I have lots of questions, but I'm sure you do. So why don't we take some questions from the audience first for Tiffany, and then we'll hear from John and have a broader discussion. So right there in the middle.
Hi, Tiffany. Thanks for your collaboration with us to share that information. I have a question regarding collaboration. Can you give us some specifics on how BBVA rewards the collaboration piece, which I think a lot of companies struggle with?
It's a difficult piece, and actually here in the U.S. too, as we work with the more that were community banks, they were very siloed. So there's an interesting piece is that they had all reward incentive programs. There was these trips, that top salespeople, this is just an example, but top salespeople would get, they were done by business unit. So what we did was we restructured them, and we looked at, if we're going to do a sales piece, we want it to be across all our lines of business. And that was one piece. But I can actually get incredible information from the HR group on that piece related to compensation. I'll tell you, it's a struggle, though. It's a struggle because you constantly have to be monitoring and looking at it, because as you bring out new products and different pieces, and you want that cross-sell piece and you want that collaboration, that's a struggle in the sales piece. If you look at the support areas, I think it's interesting is that actually in our performance reviews, my internal, for example, myself, my internal clients have a say in my performance review, and it has a good weight. So it's not just my direct manager, my direct line or my dotted line, but too, and that's been a critical piece in the collaborative piece is that your internal customers have a huge piece in your reward and incentive program. And that's very effective in the BBVA group. We're working to bring that here in the US, but it's very, very effective that your internal customers, and that we talk about customer at the center of it's that drive that customers are not just those external folks. For those of us who don't interface with external folks, it's the people that are your internal customers and your support of them, and that they actually have a say in your incentive is an important piece.
Another question? In the back.
Yeah, so you have a large organization with very high ethical standards and a very certain idea about handling customers, and you're doing acquisitions. And your newly acquired unit, maybe some parts of it or all of it didn't have such high ethical standards. What do? Do you convert the people who yesterday didn't have such ethical standards? Do you somehow make them better? Do you change people?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, and there's pieces related to the business practices that we've acquired that's part of where, and actually my Director of Corporate Responsibility and Reputation's here, but you inherit their business practices. And so when I talk about the BBVA group and the ethical foundation and those pieces, we're implementing it, and we're implementing it quickly, because for the BBVA group, there's a huge piece to the risk involved in who we are as an organization worldwide. But we have to do that, and we evaluate in the banks we've acquired and really try to. Corporate culture program went out, and it's interesting. Our corporate culture program is a 2.5-hour traditional in-classroom session. 2.5 hours, 3 hours. They launched that across the group, and I mean, I'm talking tellers, every banker high up, and they mix them from the top into different sessions. Done very quickly. We do that in all our acquisitions, but it's getting in there and really getting into the business and looking at all the pieces and the potential reputational risk and trying to evolve them as quickly as possible. Some are sticky though, but it's trying to evolve them as quickly as possible.
Okay, I know there will be other questions, but I want to make sure that we have time for John and get some questions for him as well, so thank you.
Nice job, Tiffany.
Well, good afternoon. Is this working all right? Thank you, Jim. It's great to be here. I'm John Berra from Emerson Process Management, and Chantal and Galen, thank you as well. I'm going to cover just briefly who we are, who Emerson is. As Jim kind of alluded to, we're actually quite a well-kept secret here in Austin. Probably our own fault, but so I'm going to try to make you a little bit aware first about who Emerson is and who Emerson Process Management is. But the majority of my comments this afternoon are about growth strategies and how to develop leaders using some of the experiences from our company. So I'm going to spend the majority of my time on that. But okay, who's Emerson? Traded on the New York Stock Exchange. The EMR is the symbol. We are number 94 on the Fortune 500. We were really pleased to break into the Fortune 100 in 2009 with some $25 billion in annual sales. The other interesting thing about Emerson is we will soon be 120 years old. And so if you want to think about strategies and 100-year plans,
there you go.
I'm not sure that Mr. Emerson had a 100-year plan back when he founded the company, but very similar to National Instruments in that there was a person who got it all started.
There's no exit strategy.
Yeah, that sort of thing. So
it's not.
In any event, it's rather unusual, particularly in the U.S., to have a company that is this old. And we do business all around the world. The headquarters for all of Emerson is in St. Louis. And now I'll give you our version of the up to the right chart. This is a 52-year chart. For the last 52 years, we have delivered every year increased dividends per share to our shareholders. There are very few companies that can say that they've kept that level of performance up for 52 years. Now, you do see The earnings per share had the well-known 2001-ish tech bust dip, similar to a lot of others, but we kept our shareholders whole throughout all of this by increasing the dividends per share through good cash management, as John pointed out. So we're very, very proud of that record. So that's the total picture briefly on all of Emerson. Emerson Process Management is a part of the group. It's the group I'm responsible for, and it's the largest group within Emerson at $6.7 billion of 2008 sales. Let me briefly explain what we do. If you were to go to an oil refinery, a chemical plant, a pipeline, paper mill, a brewery, a pharmaceutical plant, places where the manufacturing process typically involves a chemical reaction, fluid flowing, gases flowing through pipes, things being stored in tanks. The automation of those plants is very different from the automation that you have, say, to build automobiles. And it's generally called the process industries, and Emerson Process Management is in the process automation business. What you do with that, you can see there's three elements to the pie there on the left. You start out, you need to know what's going on in these plants. You can't look inside the pipes usually. So we make all the things that measure things, flows, levels, temperatures, pressures, analyzers, all those things to bring back all that sensing information to a central control room. The central control room is where the nerve center is. We do that too. This is both the hardware and the software, and you can see the typical pictures of operators sitting there with the bank of screens. We do all of that. The control room usually sends some signals back out into the plant to position variable valves, and we make those valves as well. So we're very diversified. We make the hardware and the software, but we also do all the services for our customer to pull all this together into an automation package, the front-end project engineering, as well as the aftermarket services and actually the on-site services for things like startup and commissioning of these plants. Our business is very global. Out of the $6.7 billion you see, only 38% in North America. Actually, the US component of that is around 32%. The rest of that is Canada. And so we do business around the globe. We are everywhere where our customers are. So that's just a little bit. You know, you can look all this up. Everybody's got a website. So what I'm going to do is talk a little bit about growth strategies and use my personal experience. I've been with Emerson for 33 years. Again, somewhat unusual, as you pointed out, but there are some of us in the U.S. who stay with a company for a period of time. And these are the strategies that have worked for us. I'm not going to stand here and tell you that they will work for every company, particularly the first one. But like National Instruments, we are very strong believers in technology leadership. Our fundamental underpinning of the strategy is we want to have the world's best products. And so we try to lead the industry. We try to anticipate the trends. We try to get the engineers who can help us do that. And that technology leadership is an underpinning of our strategy. Now, okay. How do you know that it's working? We are fortunate in our industry in that our industry is covered by trade press magazines. One of them is called Control Magazine. Every year it does a Reader's Choice survey, and they strip out all of us who are suppliers. We can't answer our own and vote for ourselves as favorites, but we hear from our customers directly through this survey. Now, we also do our own surveys, but we routinely, there's only just a handful of categories above 25. There's some 35 or so categories, some of which we don't compete in. So we finished 25 in the January 2009, 25 first place awards from our customers. And the questions are like, if you had to pick one supplier for this, who would it be? So we're very gratified for that, and that's really, I think, an indicator of the technology leadership. So it's got to start with good products that deliver value. Next, I would say to recognize that today most businesses are global or need to be global. And in fact, what you see going on today, in addition to companies that maybe were inherently European to start with, is they are buying companies everywhere. I'm sure you don't know this, but the people in the Middle East own a fair amount of those oil refineries and chemical plants that are on the Houston Ship Channel, for example. And they're now building plants in China. So our world is one where our customers themselves are global, but you also have, in addition to the household names in this industry like ExxonMobil and Shell and people like that, you have people emerging like Petrobras, for example, who is the #1 oil company in Brazil, but Petrobras is doing business everywhere. Or you have Sinopec, Chinese oil petroleum company, which is buying into businesses around the world. So you have to cover these customers globally and have a global footprint. This is what has happened to our business. This has been deliberate. This is part of our strategy. We've had to put sales, service, manufacturing in all of the world areas in order to serve our customers. And if you go back to 2002, about half our business was in the United States. And you can see as you kind of feed forward up there to 2008, it's now 68% outside the United States. And more importantly, almost half of our business is in the emerging markets, which typically Brazil, Russia, India, China make up the brunt of those emerging markets, but there's a few other ones in there as well. This was a conscious strategy on our part. We realized we had to be there and make those infrastructure investments. And I can tell you for sure that starting up in these various companies was not an immediate profit-making proposition. I first went to China in 1978 to try to start our business in China. We were one of the first American companies allowed in. We had special briefings from the State Department and all that, but it was worth it. It was a long time before we made our first dollar of profit in China. But we are now, $600 million of our business is in China, and it's very profitable for us. So I think thinking globally and acting locally as well is very, very important. Yeah, you certainly don't want to all these companies put Americans in charge of all these companies. That's the part about acting locally as well. We have local managers running these companies, but they're part of our overall organization. Solutions and services. Another big thing we did over the last few years, again, I've been around for 33. If I go back about 10 or 12 years, we sold mostly products. Somebody else figured out what they needed and what to do with them and how to install them and how to put it in. And what we found really was our customers and the engineering contractors who do these kinds of plants could not keep up with the technology. And there was an opportunity for us to provide the services because we know this better than anyone else. So we did a two-part strategy of organizing internally around industries. So we have an oil and gas group, we have a life sciences group, we have a food and beverage group, and you organize internally around these industries, but we also made some strategic acquisitions of engineering companies that know these markets and that can provide these services, and we've attached them into our company to enable us to be a solution supplier. As a result, we've been able to do some of the, you probably can't read this, but these are some of the largest projects ever done in the process industries. I'm very pleased that we just started up the world's largest LNG facility in Qatar. Emerson Process Management did all of the automation services, supplied all the automation. This LNG plant makes 7.8 million tons per year, and this plant is going to supply the natural gas to fill 20% of the United Kingdom's natural gas needs. The people in other parts of the world are recognizing the value of LNG and putting in the facilities to receive this LNG. And so the people of Qatar, who are very rich in gas, natural gas, it's liquefied, transported, and then regasified. We're in that business. We recognize that as an important business. And that's one of the world's largest projects, really successful startup. Next, some acquisitions. In the last few years, last 5 years, we've bought companies to fit and provide different capabilities that fill holes in our own capability. So we've put about $600 million of our sales in by the companies we bought in the last 5 years. And I'll also mention we divested about $200 million of businesses that didn't fit. So I think your strategy changes over time, and you have to look for companies that can help you gain footholds or penetration into certain types of markets. So those are just kind of 4 things about growth. Some of them may work for you, some of them may not. Depends on your business. Next, I'm going to quickly talk about leadership. And it's one of my favorite subjects. In fact, we have a leadership training session going on here for the company in another room in this building, and I'm going to talk to them later on tonight, which is kind of fun. What I have up on the screen are 19 competencies. Now, we didn't make these words up. This comes from an organization called Lominger, which we used to establish how we were going to develop leaders. But there's, what, 125, 130 of these competencies? 67. I saw a longer list somewhere. Anyway, I got my staff together about 5, 6 years ago, and we looked at these competencies and we said, based on our view of ourselves and our culture, which of these competencies do we really need to succeed? And what embodies the culture of the company? And we debated back and forth, and finally 19 made the list. And I'm not going to spend time on each and every one of these, but what this does is it provides a framework for us to interview people, for example. How do they stack up on these competencies? It provides a framework for us to give performance reviews to people. So, instead of each individual supervisor kind of, freelancing, and we do want them to be creative, but we also want them to address what are these employees, the specific employee, what are they really good at off this 19 list, and where are the areas for improvement? And so, for example, let me just take one which is one of my favorite, deals with ambiguity. Now, we're a technology company. Engineers hate ambiguity. They do. But in today's world, you're not going to have every piece of data that you need, and situations are not going to be able to be drawn into 8 gazillion cells of a spreadsheet. Sooner or later, you've got to be able to deal with the ambiguity and follow a compass instead of a roadmap. The compass points you in the direction, and you evaluate your decisions based on this compass. And if you're generally heading in the right direction, that's the best you're going to be able to do in an ambiguous environment. And we're kind of in an ambiguous environment right now with this economy. So that's one of my favorites. And we like managerial courage. I like people, and our management likes people to come running in the office and tell us we don't know our behind from a hole in the ground. And that is actually celebrated, not punished. And I think that's really the right thing to do, because most of the time they're right. You're making a mistake, they can help keep you from making a mistake. So those are a couple of them. But then what else do we do with this? Obviously, keep hiring, feed the pipeline. These are tough times. You don't cut back on your hiring of interns, entry-level engineers, MBAs, whatever. You don't come back on your relationships with universities. You keep that going, because new talent is the lifeblood no matter what. But then with this set of competencies, what we do is we identify across our group, I'm going to say 70, 75 of the highest potential people. And my staff, which is basically division presidents, we meet for a day. They bring their list of people, and we trade names with each other across our organizations. These are the highest potential people in this division, and each of us then can now say, well, what's the next best opportunity? I've got an opening coming up here. Maybe this person would be a good one for that. And we monitor these 75. First off, we tell them who they are, so they know we love them, and we want them to stay and be productive, and they've got good careers. but we also make sure that they're making good progress. And we want to make sure that they've had at least an increase in their challenge, if not a promotion, every couple of years, just to keep them moving along. So that's part of the leadership development. We do have a formal succession planning process. Most companies do, but ours is, doesn't look any different from anybody else's, but we use it very much in our leadership development. Okay, quickly, tough times. A couple of things here. Decide what's important and what you stand for. Part of this is culture, part of this is strategy, and protect it no matter what. And I know that's very hard when sales are tumbling down and there's profit pressures and that sort of thing. And I will tell you, there are some things that have to be cut, but you got to decide what's important and stay with it. Because, you know, I mean, if you look at that 50-something years there, there's ups and downs, there's always downs. You can't make all your decisions just based on the downs. So protect what's important. And then I would say in tough times, employees fill an information vacuum with their worst fears, their absolute worst fears. And so you cannot over-communicate. Webcasts, podcasts, letters, you name it, walking around, whatever you can do, go see them. If you are a leader, they need to see you. They take their cue from you. And you have to be strong, upbeat, but you also have to tell them the truth. Okay? These are good people. They understand that these are tough times. But even if what you're saying is the same thing you said 2 weeks ago, silence is bad. Say it again. Okay, that's my advice. You can't over-communicate in tough times. And then finally, these are actually opportunities as well as challenges. The idea is to outperform the competition, so don't go down as much as they did. You gain market position, and therefore, you know, you've picked up share, and when everything turns around, you're in better shape. Competitors exploit their weaknesses, find the openings, and go for it, because the fact that the market is going down is no reason why you can't still set goals to grow. You just have to grow relative to your competitors to gain share. So those are just some thoughts on leadership and growth, and thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
One quick question before we open up to others, John. You emphasized how important technological leadership is to Emerson, and it's kind of the base for what you do. Other than saying, hey, we're a technology company and we're committed to it and we've got to continue to hire good technical people and so on, what are the other things that underpin that ensure that technology leadership is something we never underinvest in, that when people are faced with a decision that's going to affect our technological expertise, they make the right decision? How is this embedded into the company?
Well, I would say that one of the ways we do it is we have a series of expert panels from various universities. So, for example, if the subject is metallurgy, we have these, it's like an advisory panel for metallurgy. We have an advisory panel for software and ease of use. Obviously, Carnegie Mellon is one of the places that, I hate to mention another university here, but you know, that you go for some of these. So, you know, it starts with staying in touch with our university structure, and not just in the United States, but around the world. The second thing is, like John, we pay attention and sit down with, in our case, Microsoft, because a lot of what we do is based on Microsoft technologies. We try to, you know, make sure we're aware of where they're going, because a lot of the things that we use are taking things that come from another industry, but they need to be adapted to do the process control application. Wireless is a great example. I mean, I'm speaking wirelessly, but wireless in these chemical plants is really tough because they're just full of metal. But there's some new technologies that enable these signals to go around, So we've tried to monitor what's going on in the wireless world to be able to take that and internalize it into our products.
Okay, thanks. Questions for John specifically? Way in the back.
Hi. My question to you is, can you tell me how anti-American sentiment has impacted your global business?
Whoa. I would say okay, that's a good question. I've got to pause for a minute. First of all, we try to look like a Chinese company in China. Okay, so you don't see, for example, Emerson Process Management of China. You know, it's all Chinese. So the customers know, for example, that the parent company might be from the U.S., but they also know that we've made an investment in this place. We're not just trying to pump our products in via some kind of export methodology. So that's number one. And number two, our market is good in a sense that the major competitors are American, European, and Japanese. And all three of us show up on everybody's door everywhere in the world. So they're kind of used to having competition come from different parts of the world. The anti-American sentiment is there in certain places, certainly, but you know, we just do our best to try to communicate value and communicate on the technical end, and you know, I don't think it has really impacted us very much at all.
Great. Another question right over there.
Wait.
We got one more question.
One more quick question.
Is that one for me or for everybody?
Yeah, I think that's for John. Everybody. What are your top three approaches for acquiring new clients?
I would say number one is to have a value message that resonates with that particular customer's pain. In other words, you don't go marching in and say, you know, look, the bit rate on this thing is this and that kind of thing. It's kind of like, what is your business challenge? Well, this customer's business challenge is, I've got 7 plants and I lose 10% of the capacity because they shut down suddenly due to unsafe conditions. Okay, so what can we do to help that? You have to put your message in terms of the customer's pain. And that involves some research on specific customers to go in there. I would say that the next two really relate to offering the value that solves that solution and having demonstrated support and the ability to follow through so that the customer knows if it's a new customer and they're going with you for the first time, they get this sense of confidence that, hey, you sold it over here, you're going to supply it, you're going to back it up. You know, it's not a fly-by-night kind of thing, so you have to engender the confidence in that customer.
Okay, well, it's a little different. A little different, I think, in banking, and that there's a couple of pieces that I think have changed in the last year. I think one of the best pieces for acquiring new customers is getting our message out there related to strength and stability, and the key pieces about who we are, where I think a year ago it was more about products and selling products and different rates. So I think that's a key piece, is people want to bank with a strong and stable bank. Two, I think the best thing is that when customers come in our door, that we're listening to them. We're listening to them and to really helping them with the products and services they need. Another strategy that BBVA uses, I think, very well is trying to bank not only the customer, but their entire business if they own a business. And that's a strategy that when we brought here to the U.S., I think a lot of people just focus on that one person, but looking at the different pieces related to that one person and banking their company if they own a company and all of that pieces.
From the national interest perspective, you know, the adoption of our software and being able to show that to customers and quickly show the value of how to make them more productive. And there's a network effect. I don't know if you are aware with that, but if one person starts using it, actually, and another person, it increases the value of the total network. So we're constantly working on our software adoption through academics, through new applications, and communicating new value propositions to customers. And then the other one is just spreading, since we're a platform company, everything fits together. What's the next thing that we can do to move forward? And John mentioned it, we've added new wireless sensing and measurement capabilities. So it's a new capability that we're adding to the platform and explaining the benefits and values around that new technology. The third one, which is really an interesting approach, is we have, on the innovation side, we work with customers kind of from distant worlds and look at those distant markets and how we can apply that back to National Instruments, and we kind of call these early adopters of technology, and see what we can learn from them and what innovations that we can learn from them. And those typically are professors or corporate people that are in different industries.
We're about to get the hook here, so
There we
Galen,
go.
you're on.
Well, I think that's a wonderful summary question to end on. I'd like to thank our moderator and our panelists.